CRV Productions is proud to bring you Volume 3 in our Railroading in the Heartland series. Our coverage of events begins with the Burlington Northern and Santa Fe Railway's Employee Appreciation Special, pulled by Frisco Steam Locomotive number 1522, as it arrives in Sapulpa, Oklahoma on May 20th, 2001. Here at Sapulpa, the train will be turned on the Y before heading back to Tulsa. The train departed from its home base in St. Louis, Missouri on May 18th, with the 482 Mountain-type locomotive leading the 16-car train. 13 of the passenger cars belong to the Burlington Northern and Santa Fe, and 3 to the St. Louis Steam Train Association. Also in the consist is BNSF locomotive number 684. The 684 is a General Electric -944 CW, assigned to assist 1522 if needed. The special made 3 round trips this day, hauling employees and their families between Tulsa and Sapulpa over this former Frisco line, now the BNSF's Cherokee subdivision. With turning of the train completed, 1522 heads back to Tulsa. A short time later, 1522 arrives back in Tulsa at BNSF's Cherokee Yard, completing the second trip for the day. After unloading passengers, 1522 will pull down to the Y and turn the train once again, then return and load up again for another trip to Sapulpa. While the passenger special heads for the Y, a set of yard engines go to work, sorting out a cut of cars from the yard. As the yard crews continue working, 1522 comes into view on the west leg of the Y. With the passenger train now spotted for loading, 7 locomotives for an eastbound freight couple onto their train in this bustling BNSF yard. After lunch, the train will leave Tulsa once again on the last trip for the day. Later that afternoon, we find 1522 heading south on the last trip to Sapulpa at milepost 435. On the return trip to Tulsa, the passenger special is approaching milepost 433. Arriving back in Tulsa for the last time, the employee special rolls slowly into the yard, where passengers will unload, completing another exciting and historic journey behind this beautiful steam locomotive. A short time later, 1522 heads east with its tool cars and gets in the clear as it waits for some more power to move on to its train. "1522 is making this move in order to move the cars and locomotive to a closer track, where crews can perform some maintenance before starting on another leg of its journey in the morning. The following morning, we are greeted with clouds and rain 6 miles west of Tulsa at Shirk, on this former Frisco line, now BNSF's Avard sub, at milepost 432. 1522 is making a deadhead move today between Tulsa and Perry, Oklahoma, which means it will have no passengers on board. just east of the siding at Casey, at milepost 467. The rain is getting heavier, but we are not about to give up on this spot, as it promises to be a spectacular sight, as 1522 works hard, rounding a curve and climbing a 1% grade.
Our next stop
takes us to Perry, Oklahoma at milepost 321.7 on BNSF's Red Rock subdivision. The heritage of this line is still evident, as this former Santa Fe depot still stands at this location. A group of invited guests have gathered by the old depot to wait the arrival of 1522 and will board the train for the remaining trip to Oklahoma City. The steam special left the former Frisco and BN line at Black Bear, 5.5 miles north of Perry, and will be traveling this former Santa Fe line for the rest of today's trip to Oklahoma City. "1522 is scheduled for a short stop here to add water to the tender and grease the locomotive side rods before continuing on. With passengers on board and servicing complete, 1522 is ready to depart, but has to wait for an approaching eastbound freight to get in the siding before departure. 10 miles south of Perry and north of Orlando, Oklahoma, our crew finds that eastbound freight working uphill near milepost 432. With the eastbound in the clear, 1522 is headed out of Perry with a full head of steam as it races by our location north of Orlando. For the last time on this leg of the trip, we find the special headed south at Seward, just north of Oklahoma City, where it will spend the night before leaving for Texas. It will run as far as Silsbee, Texas, returning to Oklahoma and Kansas on June 8th, where we will pick up the action once again. "18 days later, on June 8th, we are once again waiting the arrival of 1522, as it heads north from Oklahoma City to Perry, and then on to Arkansas City, Kansas. We are located just north of Orlando, near milepost 331. Later, we find 1522 already at the depot at Arkansas City, Kansas, on BNSF's Ark City subdivision at milepost 263.4. The train will spend the night and be serviced before continuing on the following morning. A tank truck has arrived to begin filling 1522's tender with fuel oil. We leave 1522 for today and rejoin the action in the morning, where this busy line crosses the Walnut River at Winfield, Kansas, 12 miles north of Ark City. The next morning, we are greeted with bright sun and blue skies, as well as 4 freight trains that need to get through here before 1522 can pass by. The signs on this bridge leave no doubt that this is former Santa Fe country, as our first train approaches eastbound on June 9th. Probably wondering about all the commotion this Saturday morning, these people fishing under the bridge seem to be taking it all in stride. Even these folks float aimlessly by as we wait for the steam train's arrival. Finally, it's 1522's turn to roll across the river. 14 miles to the north, but now on the Douglas subdivision at milepost 202.5, 1522 blasts through the tiny community of Rock, Kansas. Next, we move 17 miles north to Augusta, Kansas, just in time to catch a westbound auto train. Here at Augusta, the special will leave the Douglas subdivision and join the high-density Chicago to Los Angeles main line of the Emporia subdivision. With the westbound gone, the route is now clear for the arrival of 1522.
Y'all.
As the special heads to Kansas City and then back to St. Louis, we bid farewell and move to another steam adventure. Next, we travel to Eureka Springs, Arkansas, in the heart of the Ozarks. A trip back in time to the early 1900s. A visit to a colorful short-line railroad. Fortunately, these operations remain much as they were 100 years ago, with rolling stock, steam locomotives, a water tower, depot, and even a turntable. All of this and much more is coming your way on the Eureka Springs and North Arkansas Railway. Our tour begins in the early morning hours of June 20th, 2001. Here we find locomotive number 201 simmering in the yard, waiting to begin another day hauling passengers on a 4.5-mile round-trip excursion. 201 is a 260 mogul-type locomotive built in 1906 by the American Locomotive Company. Shortly, the crew will arrive and begin checking and servicing the locomotive in preparation for today's trips. Resting nearby is a rare 260 cabbage stack locomotive built in 1906 by the Baldwin Locomotive Works in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Number 1 is a wood-burning locomotive and is only used during the cooler days of early spring and fall, as the temperature in the cab gets too hot for crews during the hot summer months. Looking around the yard, we can see a variety of equipment and rolling stock, some of it still waiting its turn at restoration. Our crew has arrived to begin servicing 201. So let's watch and listen as Engineer Larry McCoy on the left and Fireman Brian Reeser go about their duties.
That's Celestic steam oil.
What?
Celestic steam oil. Special name, special brand. Special railroad. Special deal. Oh, shoot. You feel like getting my grease gloves? Oh, go ahead. They're under the seat. All right, thank you. They are nasty.
Look at this. You join the Army, 10 years of your life. They give you a coffee cup to tell them how appreciative they
And
are.
you get a t-shirt?
I didn't even get my basic t-shirt. I said, here, have a coffee cup. Uncle Sam loves you.
They're giving away t-shirts now. Oh, dude.
While you're at it.
Nah, Brian, you got here early enough. You ought to do your own stuff.
I'm here early enough to do my own stuff every day.
You're doing there.
This here is greasing your rods.
Oh, okay.
Better hose these before they dry, Larry.
Brakeman Larry Johnson has arrived to help out with the activities.
Get the box, Larry.
Yeah.
Oh, boy, that's not something.
Squirt this guy with the camera.
The crew takes a short break from servicing to help some others move this antique automobile to another track in order to get to some track equipment.
Take it out now. Okay. Watch that plate up that side with the fork. He's on.
This old track inspector's car is a 1951 Chevrolet, which last saw regular service on a railroad in Alabama. In the meantime, brakeman Tony Marshall has also arrived and sets to work topping off the water in 201's tender. When fully loaded, the tender holds 2,500 gallons of water and 1,700 gallons of oil. Up in the cab, with the firebox door open, we can see that 201's fire has gone out, so the fireman will relight the burners and start building steam once again.
I've got enough of that. This is the hard part here for me. Get my steam built back up so we can go. There we go. It'll lift back off. The biggest thing to build steam on an oil burning engine is to have a bright flyer, a little bit of a flicker coming out of your firebox door. Do that to steam fresh in no time. When we're tooling around in the yard and going down to the junction, we like to have about 85 pounds And then once we operate the full grade coming back, we try to have around 100, 105 to 110 pounds of pressure. We've been having some trouble steaming up. We think the fluids are getting a little plugged up again, and we might need to sand them out so she holds her steam pressure just a little bit better.
With the steam back up, the fireman turns the air pump on and starts building some air pressure.
Spread that crown brass apart. Keep it where it's not so floppy so you don't have a whole lot of rod noise.
Might have to knock that block number.
With servicing now complete, 201 and its crew are just about ready to go to work, starting first with moving the coach car over to the depot track for loading. After shoving the coach down to the switch and onto the main, 201 returns to the depot to spot the car for loading. While the passengers are loading at the depot, 201 heads to the oil car to fill with oil. Now full of oil, the locomotive will head for the turntable. Here at the Eureka Springs and North Arkansas Railway, passengers get their rare chance to take a spin on an old turntable.
Both sections are back of the engine, please.
Sit back and enjoy the sights and sounds of steam as we ride the cab of the noon train up to the Y and back, getting a close-up view of the action. The fireman has a good hot fire going with pressure up to 95 pounds and also has the exhaust fans going to help remove some of the heat. The ES and NA also runs a diesel-powered train at noon, which will be following just a few minutes behind us.
Thank you. We're dropping 100 feet on the way down. We got to ride the brakes most of the way. Do what? We're dropping 100 feet in elevation. We got to drop the brakes almost constantly. This here, of course, you know, does the coach. This one here does the engine.
Back at the depot, the lunch train that will follow us has already pulled up to begin loading its passengers. It is powered by an EMD SW1 switcher number 4742.
That's a pretty plume. Just think of that. Doesn't follow the mama. Does, we just keep going. This is 3% grade here. We'll be coming up and right track. Operative word. We're running 5 minutes on the track.
Here we catch the train as it climbs a 2.5% grade on the east leg of the Y. Normally, the train will go up the west leg of the Y first to drop off the coach before turning the locomotive. However, since the switch was left lined for this route, they stopped and let off a brakeman, who will line the switch for the west leg of the Y after they back up. After dropping off the coach, 201 is at the end of the west leg and the end of the line. It will back up on a section of the original Missouri and North Arkansas main line to reach the east leg of the Y. Makes a brief stop over Livingston's Holler Creek for those passengers who wish to take photographs. It seems as though the crew may have something else up their sleeves for the passengers on this hot and sticky day. Now on the east leg of the Y, 201 heads back to the west leg. Pauses briefly over Livingston's Holler Creek once again to allow passengers time to place coins on the rails to be flattened by the locomotive's wheels. The brakeman has lined the switch for the west leg of the Y, so 201 can back up to couple onto the coach. The engineer gets a quick chance to check over his locomotive before heading back to town, as we wait briefly for the diesel-powered lunch train to arrive. With the other train in the clear, 201 can pull up and load its passengers for the return trip to Eureka Springs. With everyone on board, we are ready to head back to town. With the arrival back at the depot, this brings to a close our visit to this unique little short line railway. We hope you enjoyed the trip and will stop by and visit the friendly folks at the Eureka Springs and North Arkansas Railway.